Hi, I'm Serena Chopra, and I am speaking to you from my living room. My wife and I have been isolated and quarantined for about 3 weeks now. During that time, I have been working on a new manuscript, and I have also been working a lot with students with their creative work. It is the end of the quarter, so finals, and then also trying to get ready for the next quarter. It is a crazy time to be an educator and to be a creative mentor. Something that we have been talking a lot about, myself and my students, is how to make art in a time like this and the importance of making art in a time like this. And for me, it always comes down to the idea that it is in times of duress and limit, times of great obstacle, in which innovation and creativity not only is needed, but in which it is activated, right? And so to allow yourself to become activated and to use the limits to reimagine possibilities. I believe that these moments of speechlessness are also the moments of the poem. They are the moments in which the poem incubates, and also the moments from which the poem activates its momentum and is inspired to present itself, its urgency. So a lot of what I am contemplating with my students is modes and methods of accepting the current constraints and innovating through and around them. And I don't mean this in a dismissive way, like in a way to dismiss the crisis, but I mean it in a sense that in all sectors of society, it is now more than ever that we need creativity. And so to engage the spirit of creativity as a singular entity, I believe also engages the spirit of creativity across the globe. If we all move our minds there, I think that that can be really inspiring and can be a great way for us to find communion with each other. So a few things that I am always inspired by, but particularly have been returning to, is Silas Saderstrom's Ideal Suggestions, Essays in Divinatory Poetics. And I'm just going to read briefly from her introduction, in which she discusses celebration. Celebration casts a space in which we can anchor what we have been through, so that we might claim the wisdom of having survived it. Celebration is not about numbing out. Rather, it is about the acquisition of wisdom, often earned through suffering. And for me, this passage really suggests that the poem itself or art itself is actually the celebration, that in making the poem, we anchor the wisdom of our gains and our losses. And it is that kind of wisdom that will help us bear future moments of gains and losses as well. So I've really been meditating on celebration, and not as Sila says, celebration is not a kind of numbing out, right? She cites the Latin root celebrare, meaning to call out, and says that, quote, supports continuance. If one is able to call out, in particular one's lamentations, through the alchemy provided by celebratory opportunities, potentially one can bear them and can again commit to another cycle of gains and losses. as well as the absurdity and enchantment of the human experience. There's just something so vital about that for me right now personally, and I think for my students, I teach this text as well, and we recently just encountered it. There was something so vital about the call to call out, the call to acknowledge the absurdity and the enchantment of all of this that we are going through, and how that kind of wisdom is held between us inside of moments of creativity and innovation, inside of the creative spirit. I do believe that it is a kind of time in which we are challenging the systems that we find ourselves braced by. I think that this is a call for revolution on a global, capital, ecological level, and that it will be our creativity that will really stimulate the change. And so for us to think about what will be the celebrations that we can enact in this moment. And later in this chapter, in this introduction, Sila cites C.A. Conrad. The aim of somatic poetry and poetics is the realization of two basic ideas. One, everything around us has a creative viability with the potential to spur new modes of thought and imaginative output. Two, the most vital ingredient to bringing sustainable, humane change to our world is creativity. This can be enacted on a daily basis. And so, I guess here what I'm trying to align is the idea that creativity is not just about making the ego present in the universe, but it is about spirit, it's about connection, it's about love, it's about attention. As H.D. so beautifully aligns in her essay, Notes on Thought and Vision, right, that when we attend to something, that's an act of love. And when we love something, we offer it spirit. And so to offer that spirit right now through creativity and innovation on a daily basis, to think about daily celebrations, that's really where I'm at right now. And so I'm going to read to you today from a new manuscript that I'm working on, which is about my grandmother and the physical traumas that she underwent. She was married at 14 in Patiala, Punjab, to my grandfather and moved into his mother's home, where she underwent a ton of physical and emotional abuse. In one instance, in many instances, I'm sure, but in one sort of final instance, she was beaten with a rope until the point of deafness in her eardrum burst. And so this poem talks about trauma and abuse and sort of the ways in which we brace ourselves in the aftershock, especially when there's not much to show for it, right? Like what happens when the bruise doesn't arrive? What happens when no one else witnesses your suffering and your pain? And so in this time of isolation, it just felt like, of all the poems in this manuscript, the most apropos one to share. So, no title. There is a ghost muscle that is water. There is her rage there, the challenge of lifting her to our lips, of letting her act upon our cells. What is trust? What are the lag lines of an evaporated spill? What kind of map of absence, of accident? when the bruise refuses to show, where the first kiss, oh, bring me the contemplation of cells shocked, the halt in the ripening of senses. To know each hair stitched to your skull, to collect those fallen into a bun, to pin where your spine insists your head to buoy despite the sinking, to drain your sight of. So something my grandmother used to do is to find hairs that had fallen out of her head and collected them together to make a bigger bun on her head. So here I'm thinking of the ways in which that sort of propping up, that insistence is not dismissive of the trauma, but is a way to sort of continue to see and to continue to have sense, to be sensory and to engage sensually, despite the sort of chaos and trauma of things. So it was really lovely to talk today. I hope you are finding ways to celebrate, to create, to be visionary despite these really unsteady and hectic times. In fact, in spite of these hectic times. So sending love and magic to everyone. Thank you for listening, and thank you for engaging me in this beautiful project. Volta.